Hello and welcome to another video in the I've Graduated What's Next series, where we explore different career pathways in tech and chat with recent graduates to hear about their uni experiences, what advice they have for students, and what's next for them. So as always, I have a very special guest with me today. I'm joined by Daniel Brockwell, who is an Associate Product Manager at Atlassian. Hey Dan, how are you doing today?
Hey, Lucy, doing well, doing well. Do you want a bit of a kind of cheeky intro about what I've done, what I'm doing right now?
Yep, that'll be great.
Fantastic, for sure. So hey there guys, my name's Dan. I graduated from UNSW last year. I studied kind of commerce, majoring in marketing, as well as computer science. About 2 weeks ago, actually, I just started as an associate product manager at Atlassian. So I'll be working on kind of building out new features for a product called Jira Service Management, which helps connect developer teams and IT teams to work better. On the side as well, I actually run kind of a tech and startup career content and coaching hub called Early Work, which includes a weekly newsletter that helps curate tech and startup roles for a community of 800 students and graduates across Australia.
Nice. So Dan, you've done so much during your time in university. What would you say are some of your biggest highlights?
Oh, too many. I tried to do way too many things during uni, and it's important not to spread your time too thin, but had a lot of fun along the way. I think that, definitely a couple that I can talk through. I think first one that really jumps out was going on exchange to the University of Virginia in the US. I think kind of like first off, it really gave me the chance to explore a lot of topics outside what I was studying at university normally. So kind of I did like a philosophy course around business ethics. I did like mobile app development and even weights training, where people literally get class credit for like going to the gym 3 times a week, which was just hilarious. And then kind of outside more so my academic learning, it also gave me the chance to get really involved with kind of a lot of the music programs there. So there are kind of over 20 a cappella groups at UVA. So kind of ended up singing and beatboxing for a bunch of groups there, performing in front of like over 1,000 people. Very different to tech and startup stuff, but a lot of fun. I think as well, like kind of looking at, say, my experience at UNSW, kind of one thing that I got involved with that really helped me a lot was being involved in kind of the, I suppose, student consulting community. And kind of 2 elements to that. Number one was kind of actually representing UNSW overseas in kind of business case competitions. So kind of through UCC, University Consulting Club, or UNSW Consulting Club, I had the chance to compete in a case competition in Thailand on like an island in Koh Samui. So the university put us up in like a 4-star hotel, and we were literally kind of like pitching like solutions to business problems to the people who ran those companies. And we'd spent months practicing kind of like researching, breaking down problems, doing slides, pitching, asking and answering questions. And I think for me, it really helped to kind of refine my structured business problem solving. I know kind of I was like a very messy communicator and very messy thinker prior. So that helped to bring a lot more structure there. And along the way, I just met some fantastic people and made some great friends. And kind of like, in addition to that, like I suppose in the consulting environment, I also was involved in university with a society called Business One Consulting, or B1. So it was actually my first year. It was just kind of purely luck. I watched kind of a TV show called House of Lies around consulting. I'm like, consulting sounds kind of interesting. This seems kind of funny. So I just found the society, interviewed for it, and kind of really from like an early age university, got a chance to have hands-on practical exposure to working with and advising startups on kind of like the business challenges they're having. I absolutely loved that. Ended up staying for kind of 2 years, and kind of as VP of operations, I pivoted the society's focus from kind of a mix of businesses, so small businesses, charities and startups, to exclusively focus on kind of, tech startups and kind of fast growing companies. And actually ended up launching a chapter at the University of Melbourne, which was just a super random but fun experience. I suppose one final experience that really stands out for me from my university experience in terms of changing my paradigm around careers was actually having the chance to go to the Stanford ASES Entrepreneurship Summit. This is a program that's run every year where kind of 30 students across the Asia Pacific with kind of an interest or experience in entrepreneurship have the chance to go to Stanford for a week and actually learn from VCs, founders, and kind of other like-minded students around all of kind of the tech and startup entrepreneurship scene. There we even got the chance to kind of pitch to Silicon Valley VCs a kind of an idea that we had been brainstorming over kind of a several-day intensive session. I think really for me, the big takeaway from this, aside from meeting some super awesome people, was actually changing my frame of reference around the sort of things I wanted to do career-wise. I think very much at UNSW and more broadly in Australia, you see kind of a lot of the top students really with a kind of a focus on gunning for these top grad programs. There's kind of a short-term focus on getting kind of traditional opportunities that have some sort of prestige. Whereas kind of you look at Stanford and really kind of the top students there are starting their own startups, starting their own charities and not-for-profits. And so I think it really kind of opened my mind up, not just, okay, what grad job do I need to get right now and trying to optimize for that, but actually kind of zooming out and going more broadly, what is it that I want to do with my career? What are the problems that I want to work on? And who are the people that I want to be more like? So I think for me, that was kind of a big inspiration in actually kind of starting to work on my own side projects. I remember one speaker we heard was actually one of the founders of DoorDash. And at the time, he had said to us, when companies start, they don't look like companies. And really, that for me is just something that I've carried through in kind of having, I suppose, kind of the confidence to kind of even just test out ideas, start things. Because yeah, when you're starting out, it can be kind of like a little janky, a little unprofessional. But yeah, knowing that it's okay that, when you're just starting something out, just like a side project, it's not going to be this crazy big Uber startup straight away. And it may never be that. And that's okay.
Great. So it sounds like you've definitely made the most out of your uni experience by doing case competitions, student societies, and also going exchange. So taking a look at your experiences outside of uni, you've also done quite a few internships. So do you want to run us through some of your internship highlights?
Ooh, internship highlights. Yes, I suppose my approach in university was always just to try out a lot of different skills, a lot of different company sizes, a lot of different industry stages. I think definitely one highlight in particular that jumps out was actually my first internship in university. I was a kind of a growth intern for kind of a mid to late stage tech startup in the fintech space called Tilt, similar to kind of what Beemit does now, essentially social payments between friends. So kind of I initially just reached out to them via email because I was like, man, this product's really cool. Became an ambassador for them at UNSW and kind of ended up as a growth intern helping to build out their partnerships deck for pitching to student groups across Australia, helped to kind of run an ambassador program of 200 ambassadors, I think across 10 different universities. And really for me, like as kind of my first professional job in uni, it was just this awesome exposure to number one, like a great manager who was just really good at, kind of giving and receiving feedback. Number two, kind of using a lot of kind of technology tools to like make workflow a lot more efficient, like as in thinking about things like Slack, Trello, Zapier, all these sort of tools, just getting kind of a first eye on those. And kind of thirdly and finally was really just about seeing that, a company didn't have to be this boring, sit in a suit and just do this. It was just awesome to see that there were people working on solving what was an unsolved problem, having a ton of fun along the way. So really this idea of like, how do you kind of help friends to say like pay for presents together or pay for trips together? Like that's a pain point that so many of us have experienced. And I love the idea and this paradigm of like when you're going to work, being really connected to solving an underlying problem and a pain point that you resonate with. Another one as well, interestingly, was actually my time as an account executive at Uber Eats. So this was an interesting one because I think throughout uni, I hadn't necessarily considered sales as kind of a long-term career path. But I thought that it might be kind of a good skill set or a good tool to add to kind of how I thought about problems in a business context. And so ended up somehow, in this job at Uber Eats, kind of just through LinkedIn messages. I'd gotten the role and I spent 6 months pretty much calling up restaurants in New Zealand and trying to convince them to like come and join the platform, which is just an insane experience in terms of like getting rejected a lot and just kind of fast tracking that skill of having kind of a structured sales conversation, building rapport and good communication with the customer, and ultimately kind of seeing the impact that would have on some businesses. Like I remember bringing on one restaurant and then kind of a couple months later, he had done so well on Uber Eats that he'd opened up a second store.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah, it's really amazing how much we can learn from internships and how much we can make a big impact on customers. So, Dan, how did you go about finding these internships and different opportunities in the first place?
Yeah, that's a super good point. You really need to think about this from kind of two different lenses. Like on the surface level, kind of the tip of the iceberg is there are job listings out there, right? And I think, you want to be looking not just on LinkedIn, but kind of there are a lot of other resources for kind of tech and startup jobs. So you've got Ribbit, Startup Galaxy, Angel List, Breakout Careers, Hatch, the Early Work newsletter, cheeky plug. There are so many places that people are putting up these roles that aren't LinkedIn. And so you want to ensure that you're not missing out on those listings. But I think kind of really compounding that, as I said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Kind of under the surface, there's all these other hidden jobs. So those might be roles that say they're full-time, where they're open to taking on a student, or maybe they haven't even published a listing at all. So the question is, how do you find and build those opportunities for yourself? Like for me, every single startup job that I had, every single internship, there was no public-facing internship listing. It came about from either me sending a cold email, sending a LinkedIn message, or kind of being part of like an ambassador group for a company. And so really kind of my core piece of advice there is just reach out to a ton of people and ask a shit ton of questions. As in reach out to people for job advice, reach out to people for resources, ask for job opportunities, even if you don't know people. I think especially like for kind of students who are early in their careers, people generally actually are really open to helping and really open to giving you advice. And if you say to someone, hey, like finding cool stuff and go, hey, you're open to hiring? And they go, I like hiring a student. They go, actually, no, we don't have any roles right now. That's totally okay. They can be like, oh, that's totally fine. Definitely keep in touch. Would love to even just kind of like hop on a call with you for 30 minutes or grab coffee and just kind of discuss kind of any tips that you have from breaking into the industry. And so I think really like cold reach outs are a superpower. Like if you can learn to effectively format kind of your cold messaging strategy on LinkedIn and on email, and then just kind of do that at a sufficient scale, eventually it's a numbers game. And there'll be some people out there who are willing to help and willing to give you really, really good advice.
So going on to my next question, how did you get to where you are now? I guess how did your internships and uni experiences sort of lead you to a career in tech and more specifically product management?
Yeah, it's a super good question. I think especially product management is just such an absurdly ambiguous pathway. Like there's no like product degree, there's no product school, you need these three things to become a product manager. I think the first thing I should just preface this with is honestly, like luck plays a huge part in ultimately someone ending up where they are. Like as in if I hadn't met a certain person or hadn't learned a certain skill, maybe I would have gone down a very different pathway. And so it's important to acknowledge like I'm just one data point. And for anyone looking to get into product management, they should kind of look to learn from a lot of different people in product and then start to see the patterns and macro trends. But I suppose kind of that being said, first off, like I think for me specifically, I think number one that was super important was surrounding myself with like-minded peers. So people who had like a really strong interest in kind of technology and the startup space. I think when you're around people who are thinking about those sort of things, it encourages you to kind of explore that area as well and to kind of cultivate those values and spend your time on those sort of things. So that has a really outsized impact on kind of how you spend your time at university. I think kind of looking at, as I suppose, my degree as well, kind of like marketing and computer science, it really, for me, the thesis that I went into it with was I wanted to build technical skills to solve kind of a lot of the problems in today's world, but also on the marketing side, understand what problems people wanted solved for them. So that diverse learning exposure was really, really valuable. And I think kind of a part of that as well was actually learning to work with very different people. Like imagine in your head, like the average computer science student versus the average marketing student. Very different sorts of people. If you can learn to build strong relationships with both of those and work effectively with them, I think that places you really well to go into a role like product management, where you have to work with so many different people, designers, engineers, marketers, support staff, etc. I think then kind of looking at my internship experiences, I think two things that I'd really talk to. Number one is just trying a shit ton of stuff. Like I think for me, my focus throughout uni was building a very broad skill set by getting exposed to like as many skills as possible. So I mean, I did sales, marketing, operations, project management, UX design, web development. And I think like as opposed to becoming a specialist too early, what I really tried to do was cultivate essentially kind of a holistic way of thinking about problems in a business context. And what that kind of allowed me to do, seeing all those different things, it means now, like I suppose when I come to a problem, like let's say in a product management context, I'm not just thinking from a design perspective or not just from an engineering perspective. I can actually draw upon those different experiences in order to think about kind of the different facets of that problem. And I think as well, like just as a candidate when interviewing, that kind of really helped me to build, I suppose, a unique value proposition and help me to kind of stand out from other candidates. I suppose the other side of that is not just kind of the skill set, but also the type of companies I worked at. So I mean, I tested out early stage startups, late stage startups, corporates, consultancies, even social enterprise. And the two key things I'd say there is you want to kind of balance building brand equity and also getting exposed to innovative businesses. So I think big brands, like I got the chance to work with, Uber, Amazon, IBM, Deloitte Digital, they often have kind of those battle-tested processes and ways of working as a business that are usually kind of quite effective, or they're kind of just really good ways for thinking about different tasks in a business. And kind of compounding that, recruiters will often use those big companies, whether this is correct or not, as kind of a heuristic or surrogate indicator for how qualified a candidate is. I think on the flip side, though, kind of balancing that with being exposed to startups was really useful because I think working for several startups in university kind of gave me a chance to have a lot more ownership. And I think generally, honestly, a faster rate of learning. Like you, in a startup, you wear so many hats, you're learning so many different skills. If you're someone who's comfortable with self-learning and kind of like learning by Googling, startups will kind of give you the opportunity to be across a lot of different things. And I think especially as someone who kind of wants to kind of work on my own things as well, both now and down the line, by working in a startup, it's one of the best ways that you can see what it looks like to grow a business from a very early stage and how those teams start to grow, how those products start to grow and so forth. I think just finally in terms of, I suppose kind of the side project stuff, I think really, two things I'd say is like throughout university, try to build, especially for product management, both leadership experience, so kind of leading societies or leading student groups, as well as kind of even working in your own side projects. And I probably spent more time on this than my grades. In the end, fortunately, that worked out okay. But I suppose, yeah, for me in university, I mean, I kind of co-founded a fraternity and was VP of that. I was president of Social Soccer Society at one point because I wasn't a very good soccer player, but I liked soccer. I started and led an a cappella group. I was kind of VP of a student consulting club. Obviously, started the early work newsletter and even just worked on kind of a small edutech app with a couple of peers from university. So all those experiences, each one just kind of taught me a little bit about, I suppose, navigating ambiguity and kind of taking action, creating something new and driving a vision. And I think as a product manager, in many ways, you're almost like an ambiguity manager, as in, you've got engineers writing code, you've got designers designing things, and the product manager is like, what do? They've essentially got to try and kind of understand what do customers want and kind of really prioritize, okay, then based on that, what are the things that we're going to build? And so having those experiences where you're leading or you're creating are so powerful in terms of building that skill set and feeling comfortable from kind of an earlier stage in your career, taking on that sort of responsibility for managing the vision of a product.
So Dan, my final question is, what's next for you? And this is a pretty broad question, but I'm really curious about what your future plans are and what you're excited about for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, obviously just starting a new job at Atlassian, super excited to kind of soak up those lessons on like product management, and trying to just understand all the skill sets around that. I think like Atlassian in Australia is just such a fantastic product school. And so very much looking forward to kind of like building responsibility and ownership there. I think kind of broadly for, I suppose, outside work, with kind of early work, kind of my content and coaching project, I think my co-founders and I are really focused on testing kind of different business models in the career coaching space to essentially kind of answer this question of like, how do you help young people find and build a meaningful career? And I think specifically the tech and startup space. So currently we're actually running a pilot kind of no win, no fee coaching program, where essentially kind of we help kind of coach students all the way from job search to kind of, interview and landing an offer. And we kind of only take payment if they end up getting that job offer. So kind of testing out a thesis there and seeing if we can find a sustainable business model and work on something really cool and really fulfilling. I think kind of, yeah, those are probably my two core levers, but kind of outside that, maybe not so relevant, but also launching kind of a small food product business, actually selling like dried chewy bananas. So my friend and I just decided it'd be like a fun idea to, try and start a food business and see what happens. It's going to be called Bananas by Mum. Keep an eye out for it. Maybe it goes nowhere, but I think at the end of the day, yeah, like it's all about just, having fun, trying a different side project, seeing what sticks. If I have time, might even make like just kind of an R&B and hip hop EP. I mean, I love music. And so I think even just thinking about your career, that's one aspect of your life. So, keep doing fun stuff, both kind of in your career and outside of it.